following video discusses alcoholism, drug addiction, and unaliving. Viewer discretion is advised. Well, I'm in my favorite spot again. Going there anyway. Beautiful evening. Grass is getting dry. Summer is approaching very fast. Should be up to 99 next week, I think. I don't know, upper 90s at least. Too hot for May, and too hot for me. This is how you know summer's coming. The ants. Don't want to get bit by that. Jeez. Jeez. They do not keep this place up. Thought I heard a rattlesnake, but it was just this. Okay, maybe let's sit on the other bench. Okay. I hear bugs circling. The shallot is not working out. Granted, I haven't styled it. This is just straight from a wash, but I don't know. I don't like it. I have not yet curled this to see if it looks better when it's curled. You know, I feel like I need to give it a chance, but I haven't been in the mood. So, I really just don't feel like turning on the camera these days. It's been a rough 2 weeks. I uploaded a short where I told you guys that I'd lost one of my caregiving clients. And that was like about a week ago on the 8th that he passed. And ever since last Monday, my world has pretty much been turned upside down. And now that he's passed away, I guess I can tell you the story. So this guy I'd been taking care of for like 9 months, since last summer. He was a really bad alcoholic and had a lot of chronic pain, so he was using pain pills on top of the alcohol. And a lot of, legitimate health concerns too regarding his heart, and he'd had a bunch of surgeries on his shoulders and knees and ankles, and he was just all messed up. He was only 66, but worked a long, hard life, and didn't take adequate time off and all of that. So, he also liked to drive drunk, which is terrible. But he would always go on Friday or Saturday nights, even at his age, when, mind you, this guy can barely walk, his very bad balance, and on top of being an alcoholic, making it worse. He would go to his favorite bar, which is like kind of one of the country bars around here in the next town over. And he would drive, intoxicated, probably. And so he got a lot of DUIs, and eventually all this caught up to him, and he landed himself in jail in April, beginning of April. So, at that point, I was ready to sort of cut ties. I'd been looking for a way out of this situation for a while because his health was, he was just making it worse, and I've been through a situation with my sister, which was very similar, where her alcoholism was killing her and making all of her conditions much worse. And so I knew where this went, and I really didn't want to. It's very depressing. I've been very depressed over the last several months, really, but especially the last couple of weeks, because last Monday, so let me back up. He spent about a month in jail, and over the course of that time, he told me he had 2 grand mal seizures, like withdrawal seizures. And who knows, they probably weren't giving him his proper, legitimate medications that he needed either. So his health was completely spiraling. And fast forward to last Monday, when I talked to him the last time on the phone, he sounded horrible. He didn't know where he was. He thought he was in a different jail altogether than the one he was in. And he said he'd been there for 6 months, and he was completely disoriented and just not with the program at all. So at that point I got really scared, because he was telling me they were going to let him out in 10 days in this condition. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? And then that Wednesday, so last Wednesday, I got a text saying he was home. After I thought, we had 10 days to prepare for this fiasco that was about to occur. Well, now he's automatically home. And I couldn't get to him until Friday because I had other jobs. I work 7 days a week. I have my schedule. I can't just drop everything and go spend a bunch of time with somebody. But his neighbor and good friend for 30 years was able to be there kind of for him and check on him and whatnot. And so the next day, I got a text from his friend saying, can you call me? And he proceeded to tell me that when he got there to check on him about mid-morning, he had fallen out of bed and was laying in between the bed and the wall, which was a very tight, scrunched up space, and he was snoring really loudly and couldn't keep him awake for more than 2 seconds. And he was saying, just trying to get him up into bed, and he was like, oh, let's just wait until he was saying, I just need to wait until the pain pills kick in, and he kept saying that over and over. And so eventually the friend got him into bed and everything was okay, and he figured he would just let him sleep it off or whatever. Well, he went, several hours later to give him dinner, because this was a day that I couldn't get there, the other caregiver couldn't get there, so he was on his own that day. And so he went to go deliver dinner, and he'd passed away. So, throughout the course of my time working with him, I always wondered if I was going to be the one to find him dead. And I'm really glad that I wasn't, because I also wondered that with my sister too. I was like, am I gonna walk in here and she's gonna be dead? Same thing, pills and alcohol. So, luckily I didn't have to find him. I didn't even end up seeing him because by the time I found out that he'd passed away, the cops had already gotten there, and they were locking down the house and everything, and they wouldn't let me go say goodbye. But so that was last Thursday. Oh, that mosquito. And I've just been understandably pretty distraught this last week. The first 3 days were the worst. I was just really out of it and in shock, like here I go thinking I'm gonna have to start taking care of this guy again after a month off, and just everything that would entail. I was trying to get prepared for him being in much worse condition than when he went in, and all of a sudden it's all gone. And yeah, I haven't felt like filming. When something like this happens, it's life-stopping. I'm sure you can understand, but this whole experience has really, brought up a lot of stuff from my family history. My mom was an alcoholic. My sister, like I said, I had another sister that was a total drug addict and lost her ultimately to the same thing, even though she had a lot of other complications. But I lost my best friend, Allie, to alcoholism, my childhood best friend. So it's just, life has been very heavy, and I've been trying to cope. And today, I almost didn't go to work at all. I was just underslept. Do you ever get where you're overwhelmed and every little thing is just setting you off and annoying you and just is too much? Life has been too much for me lately. And that's the way I felt, and I just knew I had to come out here and enjoy some peace and quiet. And luckily, I'm able to do just that. Except for this guy coming over on his boat. It's always got to be some guy coming over on his boat. But, yeah, so I really have not felt like doing much in the way of creativity. Everything has just kind of stopped. So that's been things in a nutshell. And yeah. I don't really know. I'm really in a lull. Summer's coming, and I don't know, there's that song, Summertime Sadness. I get that. Because here, it gets up to 117 degrees. And it really makes my life suck. It prevents me from keeping a good running schedule on top of the work, which also keeps me from having a good running schedule. But when I'm not running, I just feel all those toxins building up in my system and in my brain, and it just makes me depressed. So I always dread the summers here. And that's part of why I want to start a nomadic lifestyle is so that I can escape them and hopefully never have to deal with this shit again. But that's a couple years away or so. But yeah, I have not been feeling very inspired to make videos. I'm sorry. A few videos back I said I wasn't going to hold myself to a shooting schedule, and well, that's still true. I'm just going to make stuff when I feel like it, and hopefully that's good enough for you. And if it's not, you can unsubscribe. Toodaloo. But yeah, every time I have to deal with like an alcoholic death or a drug addict related death, I always think to myself, God, I really, really hope I never have to understand what it's like to actually be like they are. How it must feel to continually be poisoning yourself and not care, you know? And not be able to stop. Maybe you do care, but you still can't stop. Ugh, not something I want to deal with. But so many people do. You know, and then of course there's all kinds of other addictions, like food addictions, which, you know, to some degree I do have that. Yeah. We're not sure if it was accidental or intentional, but from what I know of him, it was probably accidental. I don't really think he would have done that intentionally. But the toxicology results haven't come back, and it could take a while to figure that out. So I don't think it was unintentional unaliving. But you always have to wonder sometimes. Yeah, I mean, I've done most of the crying that I felt I wanted to do. But I'm sure more will happen as, you know, we get closer to having some sort of a celebration of life or whatever is going to end up happening. But death just saps the energy out of you. It really does. But on the plus side, you know, he's no longer in pain. He's no longer suffering. And in his own words, he's no longer taking up air I could be breathing. That's something he always used to say, is just, yeah, I'm just sitting here breathing air you could be breathing. So, now he's not. I should get back to the car before it gets dark. I don't really have anything else to say. But if I'm quiet these days, that's why. Alcoholism sucks.